Hey guys, today we're going to do a STEM activity. So what we're going to do is there's going to be a problem in the book and we're going to create something to help with the problem. So the story I have is The Big Mitten. It is rewritten by Mage Tovey, which means there's an original story, but this person rewrote the book. And it's illustrated by Rodney Bills, so that means they drew the pictures. Mita lives way up north, near a big forest where it gets very cold. One day, Babushka knitted some woolly new mittens to keep Mita's hands warm. They were beautiful, red and white and soft. Mita wore his new mittens into the forest as he looked for firewood. When he stopped to tie his boot, he forgot one mitten and he left it under a tree. You see it under the tree? Why was he wearing those mittens? To keep his hands warm. Soon, Mouse came by, shivering and shaking in the cold. "What is this?" he sniffed. The mitten, "Something warm, just for me." You see him shaking in the cold? Mouse crawled inside. He wiggled and snuggled and made himself cozy and warm. You see him snuggling in the mitten. Soon, Rabbit came by, shivering and shaking in the cold. "What is this?" he sniffed. The mitten, "Something warm, just for me." "No, just for me," said Mouse. You see Mitten trying to get in? And Mouse says, "No." "Please let me in too," begged Rabbit. Mouse looked at Rabbit's big feet. He sighed and reluctantly moved over. Rabbit crawled inside. Mouse and Rabbit wiggled and snuggled and made themselves cozy and warm. Soon, Hedgehog came by, shivering and shaking in the cold. "What is this?" He sniffed the mitten. "Something warm, just for me." "No, just for us," said Mouse and Rabbit. "Please let me in too," begged Hedgehog. Mouse and Rabbit looked at Hedgehog's prickles. They sighed and reluctantly moved over. Hedgehog crawled inside. Mouse and Rabbit and Hedgehog wiggled and snuggled and made themselves cozy and warm. They're getting tight in there. Soon, Fox came by, shivering and shaking in the cold. "What is this?" he sniffed. The mitten, "Something warm, just for me." "No, just for us," said Mouse, Rabbit, and Hedgehog. "Please let me in too," begged Fox. Mouse and Rabbit and Hedgehog looked at the fox's bushy tail. They sighed and reluctantly moved over. Fox crawled inside. Mouse, Rabbit, Hedgehog, and Fox wiggled and snuggled and made themselves cozy and warm. Soon, Bear came by, shivering and shaking in the cold. "What is this?" he sniffed the mitten. "Something warm, just for me." "No, just for us," said Mouse, Rabbit, Hedgehog, and Fox. "Move over," growled Bear. You see, he's growling at them. He's not very happy. Mouse, Rabbit, Hedgehog, and Fox looked at Bear's sharp claws. They sighed and reluctantly moved over. Bear crawled inside. Mouse, Rabbit, Hedgehog, Fox wiggled and snuggled and made themselves cozy and warm. Bear rolled over and poked Fox with one sharp claw. Fox rolled over and brushed Hedgehog with his bushy tail. Hedgehog rolled over and scratched Rabbit with his prickles. Rabbit rolled over and bumped Mouse with his big feet. Mouse rolled over and tickled Bear's nose with his long whiskers. And what's going to happen next? Chew! Bear sneezed. The end. So what happened when Bear sneezed? The mitten went everywhere. What was the mitten doing for the animals? It was keeping them warm. They were going in the mitten because they were cold. Why was the child wearing the mitten at the beginning? Why did he have two mittens on? To keep his hands warm. Now, what can... Now, the animals needed something warm to stay in. So, today, I have some ice. And when I stick my hand in, what do you think happens? When I stick my hand in the ice, if I stick it in there for a little bit, what happens to my hand? It gets cold. So, what can I do to make my hand warm when I stick it in the ice? Wear a mitten. I could wear a mitten, or what else could I do? I could put my hand in my pocket instead. But what can I do when I stick it in the ice? If I don't have a mitten, what can I do? I can make a mitten. So today we're going to make a mitten. But instead we have 3 different things we could make a mitten out of. And we're going to try all 3 to see which material was the warmest. Today we have felt to make a mitten out of. We have paper to make a mitten out of. And we have this packaging. Pups to make a mitten out of. Now, we're going to start with the paper. How do I know what size to make them in? I could trace my hand. Or I could use some of these pre-made mittens to see which size I need. Let's try this size. Do you think this size would be big enough to trace to make a mitten? Might be a little small to stick my hand in, won't it? Yeah. Do you think this size would work? I think it would. My hand fits right behind it. I think it would fit. But when if I would try to go make another one, do you think I would be able to fit my hand in while it's taped together? It might be a little small, so we need to make the mitten a little bit bigger than what our hand is. So I have this mitten. It's a little bit bigger than my hand that I can use to trace to make the mittens. See that? So we're going to start with paper, and we're going to trace the mitten on the paper. I have crayon or markers. I'm going to trace the mitten on the paper. And how many papers do you think I would need to make? How many sides do I need to make the mitten? Do you think one side would work? Would this work to make my mitten? No, I need 2 sides to make a mitten. So I have how many pieces of paper? 1, 2 pieces of paper to make my mitten. Alright, we have our cutouts of our mittens. And how are we going to stick it together? How are we going to keep the 2 sides stuck together to make a mitten? We could staple it. Or, what do I have? Tape. We're going to tape it today. So I'm going to tape the sides of the mitten. You guys can use whatever you want to get the sides together. And you guys could also use different materials to make the mittens. So you could use aluminum foil. You could use... What else could you use to make the mitten? Saran wrap to make the mitten. That would be a good idea. You could use... Is it aluminum foil, saran wrap? You could use maybe a blanket, an old blanket or a towel to make a mitten. And I'm just taping this mitten together so I can stick my hand in it so it won't fall off. Now, do you think this paper mitten will be very warm? Maybe. It's covering my hand, so it might be warm. Between the paper mitten, the felt mitten, or the airbag mitten, which one do you think will be the warmest? I think maybe the bag of air mitten will be the warmest. And I think that because the air in is kind of warm, so when you put your hand in it, it might stay warm. But the paper mitten could be warm because it covers your hands. And the felt mitten could be warm because it's made out of felt. It's soft, and so it might keep your hand warm too. So any of these could be right. And so we're going to test them all out and find out. Alright, I think I have my mitten. I'm going to try to stick my hand in. I need to pull these a little out to make it bigger. And there we go. We have our paper mitten. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mitten and stick it in the eyes. Now, what do you think the paper mitten's going to look like when I bring it out? Do you think it'll be all nice and dry? Or will it be wet? Maybe. Will it be all just look like the same way that I put it in? Or will it be torn? It might look like the same way I put it in. Let's see. When I pull it out, it looks kind of wet. You can see it's kind of torn. And my hand still kind of got cold. So this one was still kind of cold. A little bit warmer, but still kind of cold. What can I do to keep this mitten dry instead of wet? I have an idea that might be different than yours. I'm going to put this mitten in a Ziploc bag. And this might keep it dry. Let's try it. Is my hand gonna get wet when I put it in? Let's pull it out. Nope, my hand did not get wet when I put it in the plastic bag. So the plastic bag can keep it from staying dry. Also, aluminum foil might, or saran wrap might keep the mitten from staying dry. So this one's a little bit crumbled, a little bit wet. So this one didn't work out as well. Let's try the next one. So my next mitten I have is felt. We are going to cut out the felt. We'll trace it like we did the paper. And I'll just go ahead and use this example mitten so I don't have to make two sides. And to get these mittens to stay together, what do you think we're gonna do? We're gonna keep it together, or we're gonna tape it together. We're gonna put them together. And we're gonna use tape like we did on the paper one. Try to keep it all together. I'm gonna put another piece of tape on it. Now we said this one might be the warmest because it's soft and it has cloth on it. Right? Let's try it and see. Well, I think it needs more tape. Alright, so we have our felt mitten. And I'm going to stick it in the ice. Now this one, my hand's staying pretty warm. It's a little cold, not much. Let's stick it in. Alright, I'm going to pull it out. Now this one, the tape kind of came off, but I think if we had maybe, what could we use to keep it to stay together a little bit better? We could use staples, that might stay together, or maybe a different kind of tape. Or what kind of tape do you think we could use to keep it together? Maybe packaging tape. What else could we use? Glue? Glue keeps things together. Maybe that would work on here. Or maybe we could have our grandma sew it, like in the book. Their babushka knitted the mitten and made it. So maybe we could get our grandmother or our parents to sew it to get it to stay together. And they could help you, and you could maybe learn to sew it as well. So this one, it did keep my hand warm. However, the tape didn't keep it together very good. So that one stayed warm. So our last one is the airbag mitten. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a couple pieces of tape. Now this one, you really couldn't use your hands for anything. Or this one would probably work if I didn't. Why do you think this one would work? Maybe because it's full of air. Why do you think this one would not work? You're right, you can't really move your hands very much in it. But it will still do its purpose. And it might do its purpose. It might keep your hand warm like it's supposed to. So I have my hand in this airbag thing. And I'm going to stick it in the ice. Let's see. I'm going to open up that. Alright, so I have it in the ice. And my hand's staying warm. However, my fingers are out of it still. So I don't have anything covering my fingers. So the part that is covering my hand, it's staying warm. And it's pretty warm. But this part, my fingers were kind of cold. So it didn't really work. It kind of worked, but it didn't really work to keep my hands warm. So now I have these data sheet papers. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first mitten type. And which one was that? The first one was the paper. So I'm going to write paper on here. The first one was the paper. Now, on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 being the warmest and 3 being the coldest, which do you think the paper mitten was? Was it the warmest or was it the coldest? I think 3 was the coldest. So we're gonna, red's gonna represent warm and blue's gonna represent cold. So I'm going to color in the number 3 for the coldest. And I'm gonna color in this man all the way blue, or this hand all the way blue, to represent that it was the coldest mitten. Alright, so the paper one was the coldest mitten. We have our color blue mitten, and our, we haven't written, it's the paper mitten. So the next one we did was the felt. Now on a scale of 1 to 3, was the felt the warmest or was it the coldest? I think it was the warmest. It kept my hand pretty warm. It did need a little bit more tape, but I think if it was together more, I think that one would keep our hand the warmest. So I'm going to get the red marker and color it number 1 because it was the warmest. It was the first place winner. And I'm going to color in the hand all the way red to represent it being all the way warm, the warmest out of the 3 that we did. Alright, so there's that one. And so we're going to move on to the next one. And the second one, or the third one that we did, was the packaging air one. So we'll do packing air. And do you think this one was the warmest, the coldest, or was it warm and cold? That's right, I think it was number 2 because although it did keep my hand warm, I kind of kept my fingers a little cold. So we're going to do number 2 for that. So I'm going to color it blue and red. So I'm going to color half the hand blue and half the hand red to show cold and warm. And there you go. I got a half blue and half warm hand. So when you guys go outside and it's cold out, what weather is that? It's really cold and sometimes there's white stuff on the ground. What weather? Well, it's winter when we see cold. So what weather do you think the ice represents? Just like in the book. The ice is really cold, so the ice represents winter. That's why we are doing this. So in the winter, you can use your mittens you created and go outside to see which ones keep you warm. Or also you can just make your mittens and maybe get something out of the freezer. It'll keep your hands warm to get something out of the freezer, like a popsicle. Maybe you could use your mittens to hold the popsicle. And what's another way you could use your mitten? When building a snowman, you could use your mitten to keep your hands warm when you build a snowman. You guys did very good. So today, I'm going to send home a newsletter to your parents. It explains things you could do to encourage this STEM activity. For at home, if you guys are having trouble zipping up your jacket, what are some things, just think of some things you can use around the house to help you zip it up. Can you name something right now? What's something? A string, what else? Or maybe a paper clip. Sometimes parents put a paper clip on your zippers to help you zip it up. Or sometimes there's already a string on your zipper that comes off that helps you zip it up, and maybe you just need another one. So think of things you struggle with at home and think of things to help make that issue better or help that you resolve that problem. While you're outside, ask and while you're outside, think of the weather. If it's hot, what are some things that you could make to keep you cold? What are some things to keep you cold? So let's think of something now. If you're outside and it's really hot out, like right now, what's something that could keep you cold? We already have popsicles. So that's not something we create, but we could get a popsicle. That's a good idea. We could get a popsicle to keep us cold. We could also get a towel and put it in water or a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer, and it'll keep us cold. That's something we could create. We could make a cold, kind of like an ice pack. We could create our own ice pack. Also, we just created something to keep us warm when we're in the cold. We created a mitten. So just keep in mind those things when you're outside or when you're at your house. Things you could use instead to help make your issues and problems easier. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys. Bye.